everybody, and welcome to No More Mondays. I am your host, Angie Callen, and get ready. We've got a third-party recruiter in the house. So, captive audience, you can already hear him. Have you, and you can already hear it, because have you ever just met one of those people that you like click with? Well, Gianni Portale is one of those people for me, and I am excited for you to hear about his journey, his infectious personality that has gotten him into recruitment, where he's going to give us some tips on how to leverage those relationships. But also, you're going to hear a really inspiring career story, because Gianni is a rising professional who is killing it in his career path in recruitment. In the 2.5 years since he and I worked together, disclaimer, to where he landed at Whitecap Search in New York, he's been promoted 4 times, if I count right, and has moved from a staff associate, basically entry-level recruiter, all the way to a senior director and what we call has his own desk and a business portfolio of relationships and open rec. So this is going to be a really fun conversation. No doubt you will love his energy, personality. Get ready. We're going to talk really fast, so you better keep up. And we're going to learn about how he's climbed the ladder and how he's helping candidates out there find great roles. So Gianni Portale, welcome to No More Mondays.
Angie, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I think that when Angie Morosco talks to Gianni Portale, everybody should just look out, because we're going to be 2 Italians and they should just, get ready.
Just 2 people talking back and forth nonstop, like a million miles per minute.
Yeah. But and we're going to probably violently agree about some stuff and get into some heated discussions, but all they are just what happens when 2 Italians agree about something.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're super passionate. That's what you got to love about us, but
exactly. And and I love that you found this career area for you. And this is exactly where I want to start. So for everybody out there, I'm going to set the scene. We're going to have 2 conversations today. We're going to start with giving you Gianni's career story, because it's really cool. It's really inspiring what he's doing as a younger and rising professional. But then we're also, because I would be, hung out to dry if I didn't take advantage of you as somebody in a hiring process, getting kind of that advice as a recruiter. So let's start with you. Tell us about what you're doing at Whitecap Search.
Yeah. So I've been at Whitecap now for about 2 years and 2 months, which is pretty crazy. It feels like yesterday we were working together, on my job search. But since then, I kind of started off, believe it or not, I'll kind of start with the before. So essentially, right, like when we were working together, I was working at another company, kind of just staring at a computer all day, like living in Excel. And I'm all over the place. I've always been like that since I was a kid. I like to, obviously talk and like build relationships. And I just felt, being out of college at that point in 2021, I was out of college for 2 years. And I kind of felt like, hey, this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is not something that, I see myself kind of progressing in long term. I really need to make a change. So I kind of took a leap, left my job at that point, and needed a second. I needed at least like a month to kind of figure out, all right, what am I doing next? And they always kind of say, like, especially when you don't have a plan, like sometimes that's like the best time of your life, because you're kind of just figuring out like what you really want to do. So essentially reached out to Angie because I saw her ad on Google, 5-star reviews. I was like, all right. I was talking to my mother, and Italian.
I did not hire him to give me a shameless plug, everyone.
And my mother's like, well, she has 5 stars. And Italian moms, if that's one thing you know about Italians, they are so involved in their sons' lives. Like, that is just how they are. And, she was like, well, you need to figure this out. And like, I had like a million different voices in a million different directions. So I think that was kind of the end all be all there, but essentially met with Angie. And then I get a random call from my now boss, who is one of my close friends here. He's looked out for me, helped me kind of build my career up. I was laying by my pool. He's like, hey, I have this position, because essentially when you work with a third party kind of recruitment vendor, we, obviously support our clients. Like that's like our number one priority, right? They hire us to find like the best, kind of professionals, for the roles that they currently have open. So he's like, hey, have this position, I think you would be great for it. So long story short, I ended up interviewing for it. Didn't do well on the interview because I think I was just so fresh, out of being out of a job. So they ended up passing, but he was like, hey, love your energy, would love to work with you. So like, why don't you come on board here? So like, I, came to Whitecap. We were headquartered right on Vanderbilt in New York City. So I came in, I had second thoughts before going in, like, especially like as, not really a new grad, but like someone that's 2 years out of school. Like, I think the jitters are more common than not. Like I kind of was just so nervous. So I went in. Honestly, I have to say, like, I was welcomed with open arms. And I think that was my biggest thing, Angie, from what you remember, like, just, I wanted to be able to work in an environment where I felt supported, because I haven't really been able to kind of feel that before. So essentially, they were interviewing me to start our professional services division. So that means like, any job within, like a corporate environment. So like accounting, finance, HR and talent acquisition, technology, so on and so forth. Like they wanted me to kind of help, my boss with kind of building out that division, like being the recruiter that supports him, because he's bringing in all the clients. And I thought, wow, like I actually have like a purpose to kind of build something, right? Like it's kind of entrepreneurial. So, that's essentially what sold me. So started there as an entry-level recruiter. Within 6 months, like it takes, I would say, especially in my field, takes a good like 2 to 3 months to fully get the flow. You have to be like someone that's super driven, fast paced, and obviously very money oriented at the end of the day. So, within a couple months with their training, like our training program here is, was definitely great, helped me get up to speed. Within 6 months, got promoted to senior associate, which is where they kind of helped me, start managing the client relationships rather than the candidates. So I was doing both, which is pretty interesting.
Well, and I'm going to jump in. Let me jump in real quick, because that's where your like almost the job function changed.
Yeah.
But I want to go back and I want to point out a couple things that were in like, let's say the finding yourself component, because I want to reiterate something that you maybe glossed over. But Gianni interviewed for a job that Whitecap was placing for a client.
Yeah.
And he didn't get that job, but the recruiter was like, maybe I want to hire you. And the point I want to make there is that I don't think, and I don't want to get into this, but I also think there was like another recruitment position that you were looking at another company at the same time. And recruiting was not on I don't think it was a part of our original job search strategy for you. But the universe is saying, Gianni, I think you're supposed to come be a recruiter.
Exactly.
And look at this door that had opened, because the point I want to make here, and this is important no matter where you are at in your career, but I want to make this, I really want to call this out for anybody who's younger out there, as a lot of times there's this like analysis paralysis or perfectionism to make this really perfect move. And had you stuck to the original strategy that we had for you, you would not be where you are today, because you would have said, no, thanks, Whitecap search. I'm going to stick to the original job search that I had. So look at this amazing door that opened.
I
know. Completely where you're supposed to be. And it's helped you accelerate this career. So now talk more about what you're doing, at the second tier of recruitment.
The second tier. So, essentially, got, obviously started training for, speaking with clients, because when you speak with candidates, you can be a little bit more, personalized, right? Like, it's almost like I'm calling Angie, like, what's up, Angie? You know what I mean? Like, you want to build like a good relationship from that standpoint, but with, our clients, like these are really like top tier, professionals. So we have to be able to kind of communicate in kind of like a business oriented language and understand like, kind of the ebbs and flows of that specific client. So I honestly, after the training I received, like was able to kind of spearhead that and kind of just almost have two separate personalities, right? Like it's like, this professional, like, this young professional speaking with the clients we're working with, and then, speaking with the candidates at the same time. And that makes you a double threat. You know what I mean? Because if you know exactly what the client wants and you go out and obviously help find, that specific talent for the roles that are open, like that just makes you unstoppable, right? Because you heard from the horse's mouth. So essentially, started obviously managing accounts from that standpoint, and then got promoted, did very well kind of managing both, and then got promoted to director in July of 2022. And then they tasked me, third job, to manage a team of 4 at the time, right? So I was managing clients, Obviously managing my
Now
candidate.
you're the triple threat, Gianni.
Triple threat. Yep. And honestly, like I best decision, to be honest, because now I feel that like if maybe one day they decide, hey, why don't you run an office? At this point, I have training in all the three different sectors. Like that makes you irreplaceable, right? So essentially, like, love the training and development portion of it, because I think if you're able to kind of help people, obviously understand the business and so on and so forth, like, it's almost like kind of having 3 or 4 of you know what I mean? And then that makes a great team, and we're a very team oriented business. So I think that that's definitely, a huge advantage point, but sorry, I'm rambling. But yeah.
Well, no, you're rambling in a good way, because, this idea of having the triple threat, right? You can manage client relationships, which are the companies who are engaging you to hire for them. You can manage candidate relationships in that recruiter function, but now also you can lead teams of people doing that, which is amazing. And in my mind, when I think about like the why or how were you able to like move up to managing a team of 4 people in like almost in less than a year, just a little over a year, right? I think a big reason is because you're willing to say, like, you almost are willing to say yes. And I mean that in a healthy way, right? It's like, heck yeah, I'm going to try it out. Heck yes, I will do this thing that you've given me an opportunity to do.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think especially in life, like sometimes, taking risks is definitely, it yields high reward at the end of it. But, and then essentially when that started, my boss was like, hey, why don't you, start to just manage the client side? Like, why don't you just make that your full-time thing? Obviously acquire clients, so on and so forth. So I was like, all right, you know what? I haven't had like one sole function in a bit. Like, let me try that out. So since then, since July of 2022, I've just been focused on, bringing in new clients and obviously supporting our existing ones. And honestly, like, it definitely made me, I think, a little bit more professionally mature, for sure, because I feel like when you have one kind of mask on all day, like, it kind of just makes it easier. So you're not kind of going back and forth. But I think, like, especially being like a third party recruitment vendor, like, I'm very big on relationships and honesty, because I think that when we're supporting our clients, like, they need to know, what's going on in the market, right? Like, I have clients that ask me all the time, like, hey, like, what are you seeing in the, the candidate market right now? I'm like, well, they're not really doing 8 interviews anymore. That's not something that, is kind of on the horizon. It's more of like, it's definitely more of a candidate market from what I'm seeing, but I know we'll get into that a little bit later. But, essentially.
Well, I say let's go. You took us there and let's go. Because speaking of the market, you just dropped a term that everybody out there is going, it's really a candidate market, right? Because so I want this perspective, because what's interesting about you, just from the career perspective, as we kind of shift to now giving us the intel, is you came into this during the firestorm of hiring that was, 21, 22, and then things shifted. The pendulum swung, and now maybe it's starting to settle a little bit at a happy medium. So I want to put this conversation and give this a little bit more of a timestamp than I often do. So we're recording this conversation in mid-August. It is 23, but mid-August of 23. So we've just come out of the summer slump. Labor Day is around the corner. So I want to, my first loaded question for you is, what do you see happening in the market right now? And what do you think is coming over the next few months?
Yeah. So I think from experience, like right after Labor Day, it's going to be crazy. I think that I am telling you right now, like last year, even like right after Labor Day was the busiest time I think I've ever seen. And I think this year it's going to be even crazier, because everyone's been saving their budgets for this so-called recession, right? So, when they realize, hey, like, I have maybe, $1 million left in my budget, like, let's hire all these people, like, let's create like teams, like, that's something that I feel like will happen, like, with a lot of the clients we're working with. I think we were so nervous because the banks were crashing, all this stuff was going on the beginning half of the year. But I'm telling you, like, after, having kind of my ear on both sides, like, a lot of our clients are going to be ready to kind of make that move and hire not just one, but like 5 people, 5 candidates at a time.
I wondered.
Yeah.
I wondered, you just said something that I've been, I would say, hoping, observing in my, I like to play economist from time to time. And also, side note, we're actually recording this on the exact day that the August Career Newsletter is going to hit your inbox, and I haven't finished writing it yet. So who knows what from this conversation is going to leak out via a newsletter. But I actually wondered, because there's still some economists or some projections about a recession. They've gone down pretty significantly. Then there's this idea of like a rolling recession where we're not going to see this giant bottoming out across the board, but just different challenges that like ebb and flow across different industries, which is going to make the whole situation a lot more palatable than what we saw from like, '08 to 2011. And I've been wondering, because of that, and I'm thinking you're validating it and want you to respond to this, that everybody held back a little in the first half of the year, trying to see what happened. Tech went through its giant transformation, which made people nervous. Now that we've gotten on the other side of the summer slump, I'm wondering if there is some budget and some confidence to now find a nice middle new normal ground.
I think that's a great point. I definitely kind of have heard both sides. I do think, it really just varies on sector, right? Like we saw tech crash, right? Like tech completely crashed. Like
Nobody wants to use that term, Gianni, but that's what happened.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. Like I'm a straight shooter. Like I'll just say technology really just kind of took a huge hit. And I think that they laid off way too many people. A lot of companies did at that point. And now I'm starting to kind of see that slow rebuild, right? Like that's kind of what I'm starting to see. And I feel that even, because banking kind of took a big hit as well, right? So they kind of did the same thing, laid off too many people, but now they're starting to build back up. Like, it's not as bad as '08 with Lehman Brothers. Like that's not what's kind of happening here, and I do think that they, we were kind of scared a little bit, more than we should be. And, that's why I feel like kind of these news outlets are kind of just, kind of saying, hey, like, this is going to be going on for the next 5 years, but it's like, when is this happening? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I still feel like companies are hiring, more than normal. Right. And especially like last year, they were saying the same thing. And it's like, well, when is this happening?
I know. Last year, and was it, I can't remember. I think it was 21. I had July of 21, I had like 41 people get jobs in 30 days. It was nuts. But yet if you wanted, you could hear it's a terrible market story. And you hit the nail on the head. First of all, I like that you just call like the spade a spade, right? Tech crashed and now it's rebuilding. And what I think that crash was a knee-jerk reaction to probably what has been overhiring, a long time of overhiring. And then straw that broke the camel's back was a surge in hiring in 21 and 22. Knee-jerk reaction to correct that by cutting a lot. Yeah. And now they're bringing back in a more strategic way because they see where their critical needs are. And that may end up working out in our favor in the long run. It just didn't feel very good for the 6 months we were dealing with it. And, the other thing that I think is important is like, let's look at perspective here for a second. And this is the kind of stuff I like to look at and I think is really interesting. The hiring climate right now is very similar to like 2018 and 19. Yes. We just got so used to the recovery from 2020 that was the hiring frenzy from the beginning of 21 all the way until about a year ago. Yeah. We got so used to that feeding frenzy that we forgot that what we're seeing right now is kind of the long-term normal. It's normal. I'm telling you, like even, I've had conversations with friends that are, in varying industries, and it's like, and they've been, because it's interesting because this is kind of a sidetrack, but I'm, 27 years old, like, and I have friends now because especially since working in this industry, I have friends that are, obviously a little bit more seasoned, right? So like they've kind of seen it all, and they kind of. Gianni, are you calling me old? No, you're not old. You're 15. No, I'm kidding. But so, after speaking with them, they're like, hey, like, 2021, 2022, like 2022 was, obviously super busy. But like before that, like, this was kind of similar to like, you kind of hit it like at 2018, 2019, like this is what normal hiring looks like. I think just like everyone is, kind of expecting like, all right, like let's just hire, Joe Schmo off the street and kind of just call it a day.
Like, that was what it kind of was. Like, you didn't even have to be qualified sometimes. But I do think that it's kind of normalized now. I do think that we've reached a point where,
Yep.
we're out of the danger zone, and I think that we just kind of got to recognize that. Like, I would be nervous if I was like Angie, like, all the companies we're working with, everyone's laying off. That's not the case. Like, so.
Okay. So this is okay, awesome, because now I want you to get, this is the thing is we're talking to somebody who is directly engaged with the hiring side. And I want you to explain how that all works to people in a second.
Yeah.
However, we're talking to somebody who, we're not talking like one company here as a third party recruiter engaging with a lot of companies who are all hiring, which builds some trust that what you're seeing is reflective of the bigger market. And I think what's really important to remember and to recognize is that 21 and 22 were the anomalies. What we're in right now is not the anomaly. It's the normal. Yes, it's tight in response to the little bit of a crash we saw at the beginning of the year. But for all intents and purposes, this is exactly like we both said at the same time. This is the normal.
This is the normal.
So as you're engaging with these companies who are hiring, I want you to explain how that looks as a relationship, right? So how are you involved in the hiring process? How do you engage in those kind of two sides? I think it would help everybody to see behind the curtain and understand the role and the relationship of a third-party recruiter in that bigger picture.
For sure. So essentially, I'll kind of go step by step here, just so everyone can kind of understand. So essentially, right, like let's say I'm just using a random company name, JP Morgan Chase, right? Someone in their risk department says, hey, we need about 3 risk consultants to join the team, right? And they have had no luck with their current internal HR department. Like, let's say they've, put out ads, they're not able to find, the correct talent, or maybe someone that kind of fits the, the work culture that they're looking for, right? Then that's when they'll kind of, decide, hey, like, let's reach out to a trusted agency partner. Let's see what they have. Because when you're, obviously an agency, we work with over 300,000 candidates. Like, I'm telling you, just in our database, we have over 300,000 candidates, right? In all different fields.
So when the recruiter on LinkedIn doesn't write back to you, that's why, everyone.
That's why. It's not because, and that's another thing, because I get a ton of messages too. I try to respond to every single one, but like, we're all human. Sometimes like it's, you get bogged down by maybe the day to day, but I do think like if you're blatantly ignoring someone throughout like an interview process, then that's a problem. I would say like if a message is improperly received, then like maybe just shoot a follow-up note. Hey, haven't heard from you, but that's a story for another, that's a story for another day. But essentially, like I said before with JP Morgan, right? Like if they decide, they can't find the right talent through their internal team, they might, kind of come together with HR and kind of say, hey, have had no luck. We haven't been able to find the right talent, internally. Let's reach out to an agency, because they have a candidate pool of thousands, people that you wouldn't even be able to find like on normal, websites. So like if you go on like LinkedIn, I mean, everyone has access to LinkedIn talent pool, but I think, we kind of have like our own little marketing tool just in terms of, what types of candidates we're able to kind of attract. Like, especially with like a JP Morgan, they might attract one type of candidate, right? But as a search firm, we attract all different types of candidates, right? So if they're not interested in one specific job that you might have within like an internal organization, they might be interested in something else that we're working on, right? But we're able to kind of persuade and kind of speak the truth to them, like, hey, this is a great opportunity for you. You got to work, you should try it out. Because the internal team might not feel the need to kind of have to oversell themselves. We do, because agencies do have kind of a reputation of like, all right, maybe this person, maybe this agency is just going to ghost me, or, I've had a bad experience with the recruiter. But you have to make sure that when you go out to an agency, you trust who you're working with. And I think our firm does like a phenomenal job of obviously, building relationships and keeping them. Like, I know people here that have had, the same candidates they've been working with for 15 years, same clients, 15 years. So that's essentially when a company might decide, right? So when that happens, they might reach out to one of like someone on like the sales side, we call it. So someone that's handling clients. So then from there, we obviously get a contract written up because we can't be placing people with a client if, you know, we don't have something that kind of covers like indemnification, like both sides, right? Like, let's say you hire someone and the person just ends up being a nightmare, right? Like, we don't want to be indemnified as, you know, the problem when you're supervising, right? So that's why we have contracts in place. So essentially from there, they'll release the searches to us, right? And then immediately we set up a call with them, like with the hiring managers, like, hey, if they're like, we have 8 rounds, we're like, guys, no one is going to want to sit through a process for 8 rounds. I'm telling you right now, we should do, you know, 1 to 2. So we kind of have that profitability of just kind of speaking to them as market experts, like, hey, like, this isn't going to work for you. This is why people are not going to your jobs, right? Because there's 8 rounds. Like, you got to hear it from us because we have other clients that are, you know, obviously moving at a faster clip. So it's good for them to kind of hear from the horse's mouth, like, hey, you know, your process isn't working, and they'll take our word because we're just screening and calling candidates all day. We're working with other clients, you know what I mean? So if a regular candidate said that to someone that, you know, they apply to internally, it's not going to sit well. They're going to be like, all right, well, this, you know, this person just wants to get a job here and they're being difficult. You know what I mean? It's kind of just seen differently. You know, so that's kind of just the benefit of working with a recruiter because we're vouching for you. We want you to get the job because essentially, like, we wouldn't want to just screen and call candidates all day without any sort of, you know, return for you and, you know, obviously a good career future. So hopefully that answered the question.
Totally. And it took me to the other side of the equation, which I wanted to talk about and spend a little bit more time on, which is how do candidates engage with you and make the most of this relationship? Because, you know, a few things that come up on the client side, you know, with somebody like Gianni working with a JP Morgan is, you know, they have influence over hiring requirements, job descriptions, interview processes. I don't know if you heard Gianni mention the fact that, like, hey, let's do 2 interviews instead of 8. Everyone loves you now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there's an influence there because they, you know, somebody like Gianni's got a finger on the pulse of the candidate experience a little bit more. So when we get into the candidate side of this engagement, you know, you mentioned, for instance, that there's people who have worked with, you know, a candidate that's worked with people at Whitecap for like 15 years. You can actually build these relationships. And the piece I'll bring up here is that I get, like, when I talk to people that haven't job searched in about more than 10 to 12 years, they still think that headhunting exists. And that while there are a handful of headhunters out there now, I don't recommend them. They're exorbitantly expensive and they don't give you any guarantees. Yeah. But for most part, that function that people like me knew when I started my career has died, and recruitment is purely a company-driven activity. Exactly. But where you as an individual can bridge the gap is with engaging with recruiters, whether they're internal or third party, to build these kinds of relationships so that you're front of mind when a role or a rec comes open on your client side, right? Yeah. So talk to me more about how a candidate can and can productively engage with somebody like you, you know, to kind of almost become their own headhunter and build these kinds of relationships. How do we do that?
How do we do that? So I would say the best way, like, you know, I think it's just human decency. Like, I think when people reach out and they're like, find me a job, I need a job, that doesn't make me want to respond to you. It's like, all right, I'm already doing a million different things per day. And then now you just added something else. Like, I would proactively reach out, whether it's via LinkedIn, you know, you see something online and it's tied to a recruiter. Like, I would just shoot them a note like, hey, you know, need your advice, like, need your help. You know what I mean? Like, I need some sort of input on what I should be doing, you know, on my job search. When someone sees that, like, if I see that message and I've gotten that before, I will literally I will stop what I'm doing and I will call you. You know what I mean? Because that's someone that's in need. But if you come off like, okay, you need to find me a job now. Like, here's my number, here's my resume. It's like, well, I don't even know you yet. Why would I represent you if I don't know you, right? Because if I was just doing that with every person that shoots messages out, like, we really aren't, you know, properly screening and qualifying the people that we're talking to. So I would say if I was like on the other side, I would shoot definitely like a nice note, like, hey, you know, currently on my job search, would love to hear what you're seeing in the market, would obviously love to network and get to know you further and, and even, receiving that, like, that would make me want to even be friends with you. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you build friendships, like good long-term relationships. So I think just being a little bit more soft with the reach out to a recruiter, like whenever you have time, right? Because we're people, we have a lot of stuff that we're doing. So, we love to stop and drop everything for you, but that's just not the way the cookie crumbles, if that makes sense. So just to kind of sum it up, just reach out, shoot a nice note. Hey, would love to get your advice. Let's network, so let's get lunch, like, let's meet in person. Like, that's the type of thing that I think, a lot of people should really focus on doing.
The operative word in the last 3 minutes of conversation is relationship.
Yes.
I'm trying to own the hashtag humans still matter on LinkedIn. And I think I will, because basically I'm the first one that's ever used it. But that's really what it comes down to, is we're all humans. And if you treat each other as a human with genuine, authentic interest in building a relationship, this whole concept of networking becomes much more approachable. The whole idea of finding recruiters who will become good allies becomes more reasonable as well. And so where I will just give a piece of recommendation, because I don't put career coach hat on a lot on No More Mondays. So here comes like a practical piece of advice that I think I've typed on LinkedIn about 17 times just today, is that if, networking is a lifetime investment. However, most people don't do it until they need to, when you need a job. However, when you need to network because you need a job, it doesn't necessarily leave as much time to build relationships. So if you do it proactively and you say, hey, I live in the New York area, I know Gianni's a recruiter in my region, I'm just going to proactively reach out to him, get on his radar, and build a relationship, even though I am in an okay place and I'm not actively job searching.
That is key.
Will lead you somewhere so much better in the long run than, Gianni, I'm on the oh shit handle and I need your help. I got to have a job, right? It just doesn't work as well. So if you proactively do this and you never stop, right? You nurture, you build that network, you nurture it, it will return for you in spades.
Exactly. I agree. And I think that, especially if you're like a current, not even if you're just passively kind of looking right now, like, I think, it's always good to be prepared, make the right connections, make sure you reach out to that recruiter that you're kind of just seeing post on LinkedIn, like, establish that relationship now, because when the time comes, we'll be ready to go, and you already have a relationship established, rather than, kind of worrying about your resume, got to get up to date, and then trying to find someone that you could kind of talk to, so that's kind of my mentality.
Yeah. Or what happens if you find somebody in your search results because they fit the avatar you're looking for? Yeah. You reach out to them and they're just not prepared because they haven't updated their resume in over a year. Definitely keep your resume updated. Always. I recommend refreshing it at least every 6 months. 3 is better.
Yep.
Because you should always be prepared, even if you love your job. You never know what opportunities may come your way. And I think it is a valuable experience to be open to conversations. It doesn't mean you're disloyal. It purely means I'm always prepared if something curious comes my way, so that I can have that initial conversation for somebody like Gianni, who might be looking for your specific experience and skill set.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. And I remember you used to tell me that a million times, and you were absolutely right. I'm telling you, I took your advice because Angie used to, just a little glimpse real quick, but Angie always used to, during our sessions, because we still spoke after, you were always like, hey, make sure you're updating your resume, make sure it looks this way. But you're absolutely right. And I tell even the candidates I work with, even the ones that I've already placed, like, hey, make sure everything's up to date. Because, that's the worst thing. Like, when you're a recruiter and you're ready to send someone to a job and you look at the resume, oh, it hasn't been updated since 2020. It's like, all right, let's go back. Like, let's do it all over again. So it's definitely really important to make sure everything is always up to date.
Well, and there, you just brought up a good point, is that because the relationship of recruiters in the hiring landscape today is what it is, you just gave, and now, you're a little different. You're more candidate minded than many recruiters out there, not to step on anyone's toes or call anyone out. However, in a lot of situations, and I would even say in sometimes if you are a candidate and you send a resume that's out of date to a recruiter, you're going to get a pass because the additional time they would need to support you or coach you or just even wait for the updated resume is like a pass onto the next person.
Yeah, it kind of shows like, all right, this person might not be as serious on their job search as, we thought. You know what I mean?
So since we're talking about resumes, I wasn't going to talk to you about that. I wasn't even going to ask you this. I didn't think of it, but I'm going to just put you on the spot. So because we're talking about resumes, I would love to know from the horse's mouth how you as a third-party recruiter in a high-volume situation review resumes. So it's almost like let's debunk or confirm some myths. So some statistics flying out there right now is a recruiter scans maybe up to 200 resumes a day. The scan is 6 to 10 seconds long. And then I'm curious. So I want you to like talk about those two things. And then I also want to talk about when you are scanning, what your like top 3 things you look at.
Okay. That is a great point. Number one, I think some of those I can debunk and I can also confirm nor deny some of them. But just the number one thing that
way to be Switzerland.
Maybe so I'm going to play Switzerland a little bit, but the number one when, especially a lot of the recruiters, is at Whitecap, we look at the top 2 experience, most recent experience you've had, right? So let's say I'm looking for someone in a quality assurance role. You're looking at the keywords that match kind of the job title, right? So if you're looking for someone for a quality assurance position and then their first role, like if you're looking at a candidate resume and then you see that it's like a little bit different, it kind of gears us like, oh, maybe this person's not as qualified, right? That's why you have to scan really quickly the bullet points and then, make sure that they're fully qualified for the position. So I would say a typical scan would be anywhere between like 20 to 35 seconds for me, at least. I'll read through everything really quick. I'll kind of say, all right, this is someone we can definitely work with. Or, if I don't really see any relative experience for the positions we're, working with, then we'll, obviously not reach out. But I think the biggest thing we look at are the job titles, and then the first 3 bullet points of the job. Those are the top 3 points are really the most important part of your resume. Like when you have like, for example, like loan closer, right? And then you have your qualifications kind of written out. You really need to make sure that those top 3 points, tailor correctly to the job you're applying for. Otherwise, the recruiter might think, oh, this person didn't take the extra mile to kind of make sure that, they fully, understand what's expected, So that's kind of what I've, pretty much been through and what everyone here, looks at. I would say that with resumes, like if you have more than 1 page, we're not looking at it. Like that's another thing.
Oh, you're killed. That one, you just killed me. I'll tell you that. I will say though, most of the other stuff makes sense to me, and to some extent, I was like, "This is just as validating for me as it is for everybody out there." However, we tend to follow the 2-page rule of thumb now, but a lot of that might be from the data parsing side, as you need to put enough in there. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with the data parsing, like I would say, if you have like over 30 points written out, I think that's what I was pretty much referring to with like the multiple pages. If you have like 30 points per job and then it kind of just takes it up, it's like, all right, we're not reading through, all of that. And if it's like 2 to 3, 4 pages.
Wall of bullets, please. Yes. No wall of bullets. Because your eye won't scan it. The eyeball can't scan it.
We cannot scan that. Like that's just too much. So, essentially like when that happens, we'll still call the candidate, but we'll be like, you need to fix your resume. You know what I mean? You really need to narrow down to like the key points. But the data parsing, like I would make sure that when you're making these bullet points, you're not copying job postings or anything that you're seeing, that is really, really, really important. Because what I do when I first read a resume, I'm like, let me see if this resume is legit. Let me go on Google. Let me type in a couple of the keywords. And I, believe it or not, I have come across candidates copying certain job postings. And it's like, you're making it obvious to the third-party recruitment agency. What do you think the company that created the posting is going to say? So you got to be careful.
There still has to be the interpretation there. Like you may still have the skills that those bullets represent, but you have to interpret them and put them in and say them in your unique way, still relevant to the context. But I love that you brought this up because there's been this article circulating, and this is something that I haven't heard in years. And it came up, a client sent it to me and was asking me about it. And then I started seeing it pop up on LinkedIn and everything, is this idea of like putting the white copy behind, copying the job description and hiding it in your resume via white text. And back in the day when like the ATS systems that we're talking about, the data parsers first came out, that was people's workaround. So a lot of those systems started to be trained not to scan that kind of stuff. But you also have to think about if like, how does that look from an integrity perspective when somebody actually discovers that you've done it, right? Like get this job based on your merits, be thoughtful, be authentic, be a human. Humans still matter, hashtag.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I will not, like, it's hard for me, like, especially as someone that's going to be vouching for you, to even trust you if you're doing that. What do you think you're going to do when you start the job? What if you take, copyright private information from the company or, and you're dishonest about it? Like, I think honesty, it sounds super cliche and weird, but like honesty, it truly is the best policy. Like, if you need help with like, fixing the resume to tailor it to a specific job, like talk to a professional, talk to a career coach, have them kind of, help you tailor it. Like, do not like take the own initiative to, copy or take, work that's not yours, it just really, just to kind of sum it up, wouldn't want to make me work with you,
Please, and please don't take the job description and put it in Chat GPT and say, please write me a resume for this job description. Please don't do that. Please don't do it, because it will look like shit. It will read like shit, and it will not be unique to you. So now we're just on a soapbox, which I actually kind of love though, because this is just like validation of the fact that humans are a critical component, and that idea that you want to go into a role with trust and honesty at the forefront. The last thing you want to do is make false claims. Apparently, a lot of people lie on their resume. I was shocked to find that out like halfway through my career as a resume writer and career coach. Don't do it, because it will always be in the back of your mind whether or not somebody's going to find out. And the point I think, and the point I want to make to kind of bring this all together, is that if you are going to build relationships with recruiters as part of your long-term career development strategy, you have to build that trust, because these people like Gianni they do have that influence over the hiring process. And while a lot of times you see them as a gatekeeper, I just got to get past this screener. Okay, maybe that's the case, but what if you got past the screener and you made an ally out of the gatekeeper, right? Now you are a much stronger candidate who, in a way, you've got somebody in your corner who might go to the hiring manager and say, you've got to meet this person. Right. Exactly. So there's a lot to be gained by reframing the perspective on how you approach recruiters within a hiring process, as a whole. No,
100%. I think you just kind of hit it right on the donkey. So I completely agree.
I love it.
I think, just to kind of like sum everything up, I do think just approach your job search super honestly. Be honest with the recruiter you're working with. They're working for you. They want you to succeed and want you to do well. I think find a reputable, company to kind of represent you. Find a reputable career coach to kind of speak to. I think if you're working with both, an agency and a career coach, you're unstoppable. So, I think we'll instead, for sure. So, not trying to market us a little bit, Angie, but.
I would say let's just market us both, right? I love it.
Just let's get a shirt and just put that on there. But essentially, I do think, don't like go into your job search like blind. Like, don't start just applying blindly. Make sure you talk to someone that's been in the industry and knows what they're doing.
Yes, and I'll say what I'll summarize that piece to be is, even though what we talked about earlier when it comes to forecasts and projections suggests we might be shifting back to a slightly more candidate favored market.
Yeah.
I am still seeing the need to be very strategic, and always, no matter whether it's a feeding frenzy or not, be prepared and focused and clear on your job search, because you'll get somewhere much better than if you're caught behind the 8 ball, you don't have a plan, you're shooting stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Exactly.
And then you understand better how to engage people like Gianni and, people like me, if you want me in your process
Exactly.
too. So, plan, prepare, and be proactive. And if you're going to network, be authentic about it. And speaking of networking, how do people find you, Gianni?
Yep. You can find me right on LinkedIn, Gianni-Portale. And, obviously follow our Whitecap search page. You'll see me posted on there quite a bit, as well as my colleagues. And feel free to obviously reach out to us there. I also have Facebook as well, connected through Whitecap search, as well as Instagram at Whitecap search. So
there you go. And Gianni's a trusted part of my network, so you can find him through my LinkedIn page, and we will put all of the things he just mentioned, including Whitecap searches page on No More Mondays in the show notes.
Great.
And I love this. This was like an awesome practical, tactical, like behind the curtain look at hiring process today. And I love it. And I hope if you're job searching, you got something out of this to either validate your current process or give you food for thought on how to optimize what you're doing. And let's give them some more advice. So before we go, I would love for you to give everybody one more little pearl of wisdom, your number one piece of advice on what everybody out there can do to get one step closer to career satisfaction.
One step close. That's a great question. You almost stumped me there. But I would say the number one piece of advice that I would have is make sure you reach out to your personal network before you start your job search. Right? That can benefit you if you have people like 10, 15 people in your personal network, vouching for you. That's more heads that are, obviously trying to help you out. So I think try to reach out to your network, see who you currently have and, have them, obviously help you out with your job search, just to kind of sum it up. I would just say like, even your mom or dad, like they might know someone who knows someone who knows someone, just always work closest to home, and you'll have trusted people truly looking out for you. So that's my number one word of advice.
It all comes back to #humans still matter. But I'll go one step further in that a lot of times when people are ready to job searching, whether it's because of a layoff and they have to job search or because they're thinking of it, there can be some fear in letting their inner circle know that, right? Oh, I don't want them to know I'm in a bad spot or all that kind of thing. And that is about the worst thing that you can do for yourself, because that is your team, right? That's your team who's going to support you. Even if it isn't directly through connections, they're there to mentally support you through the marathon that is job searching. So you're doing yourself a disservice if you're avoiding that immediate network as you get started in this. That's an awesome piece of advice.
100%. Yep. And obviously, just to go back to that, your family and friends are there through the good, bad, and ugly. So you shouldn't have to hide anything. So that's my word of advice.
If they're going to judge you for this, get them out of the inner circle.
Get them out. Gotta kick them out. Throw them to the street.
Oh, Gianni Portale, everybody. I knew this would be a fun conversation, and this went a few places I didn't necessarily plan, but I love it. And I think that we gave a ton of value to people out there, whether you're actively job searching, whether you're considering a job search, or whether you're comfortably in a current role. We really gave you some things to consider on being open and being prepared in case somebody like Gianni comes your way. So I appreciate you, and thank you for sharing everything today.
Thank you so much.
This was awesome. We always love talking to people who have navigated their own career crossroads and landed somewhere pretty sweet and are helping others do the same. And he's in the direct line of fire. So I hope all of you will reach out, connect with Gianni. He's got some great wisdom for a 27-year-old. I'll give you that too. So thank you for being part of the No More Mondays movement and giving great advice. Remember, head on over to nomoremondays.info to get all the links and show notes from today's episode. Leave us a 5-star rating, because how much did we just pack into a 40-minute episode, everybody? And it's a huge help as I continue to bring you all these inspiring and practical resources. So hit us up at nomoremondays.info, and I will talk to you next week on another